Hey, everybody, it's Tommy Canale, and welcome to Before the Lights podcast, the show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Today, we have a philanthropist and the holder of 2 Guinness Book of World Records. He has received multiple Lifetime Achievement Awards, is a New York Times bestselling author, celebrity cosmetic dentist with over 40 years of experience in the Beverly Hills area. He has transformed the smiles of Katy Perry, Anthony Hopkins, Hugh Jackman, Jessica Simpson, Eva Longoria, and many more. The founder of the nonprofit Leap Foundation and the dentist on the AB show Extreme Makeover. He is referred to as the Michael Jordan of dentistry and has appeared on several TV shows that include Oprah E. An entrepreneur, TV personality, and humanitarian, he has done numerous interviews such as The View, Larry King, Jay Leno, Rachel Ray, the Osbournes, and now, Before the Lights. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Bill Dorfman.
Thank you, Tommy.
Tell my listeners, who was Dr. Bill Dorfman as a child? What did you enjoy doing?
Wow. Nobody ever asked me that, what I enjoyed doing as a child. I was always very artistic. I was always drawing and coloring and making models, and I liked creating stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I was a really weird kid. Like, I knew it too, I kind of embraced it. But, I remember going to my first day of kindergarten. And, I come home and my parents are sitting there and they're like, well, son, how was school? And I said, school is pretty good, but the kids in my class are so immature. I was 5.
Wow.
Right? I always felt like kids around me were so immature. Like, I didn't understand the teasing and the bullying and the fighting and I was never a kid. I was like an adult in a little body. It was weird. I think maybe that stemmed from being the oldest of 5 kids. And, I always assumed kind of the father figure role, in my family. It was strange. I remember when I was 6, I came home one day and I told my parents I wanted to have a conference with them. And what kid does that? So I sit them down and I said, Mom, Dad, I know how to read now. They go, yes, you do. I said, so I don't think I need to go to school anymore. I'll just read everything I need to learn. They're like, no, we think you should still go to school. So, and that's the other thing. I didn't argue. I was like, okay, I even asked my mom a little while ago. I'm like, Mom, I don't ever remember getting in trouble as a kid. Like, did I ever get in trouble for anything? She goes, no. I'm like, never? She goes, no, you were pretty easy. I guess I always kind of knew right from wrong, and I figured, I'll just do the right thing. It's so much easier. And I don't know. I was not a normal kid. I know that. And I think the other thing that differentiated me in a lot of ways is I was always aware of kind of rules, but I kind of made my own. I never really let people just tell me what to do. There's a lot of people that are very comfortable having like boundaries, and that was never me. I think probably best example of that was, when you do a TV talk show like The Tonight Show or Ellen or Rosie or any of these shows, what they do is they sit you in a little room and they'll have a producer talk to you for like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a shotgun. They ask you, trying to find something cool and interesting for the show. Then when you go out and you do your 6 or 12-minute segment, they ask you the same thing again. So they pretty much know what they're going to get, right? There's only 2 times that I've been on TV that didn't happen. Larry King Live, which is live and they never tell you what he's going to ask, and Oprah. Oprah has such extensive research. She knows, right? Oprah looks at me and says, Dr. Bill, you've had a career unlike any other dentist in the history of dentistry. She said, what inspires you to think so far outside the box? Well, this was like in 2006. I had never heard that phrase before, think outside the box. It wasn't even really part of our American lexicon at the time. And I looked at her and laughed and I said, what box? And we cracked up. And that really exemplifies my entire life, And I think one of the biggest obstacles to people's success in life is that they do put themselves in boxes,
Agree.
And they don't really venture outside. Like, if I have a good idea, I'm going to do it. One word, Zoom. I invented Zoom tooth whitening, and that revolutionized tooth whitening in dentistry. I didn't just sit there and think, oh, this would be a great idea. I thought this would be a great idea. I'm going to do it. And I did it, And I feel like so many people are afraid of failure that they won't try things. And, my take on that is this. I never fail. And I'm not saying that in arrogance. I never fail because if I do something and it doesn't come out the way I want it to, I don't consider that failure. I consider that practice. And I'll do it again and again and again until I get it right. So you really only fail when you quit.
Agreed.
I never quit. So if you don't quit, you don't fail.
I'm with you 100%. When you talk about the maturity you had at a very young age, it now transpires as you being one of the youngest ever to receive your doctorate degree from the University of Pacific in San Francisco. And then you did a 2-year residency at a dental hospital in Switzerland. Dr. Bill, what did that residency teach you before you came back to the United States and started your own practice?
Well, the first thing it taught me is this. They had 400 applicants for one job. I was going to get it. Right? So
goes back to I'm not going to fail.
What did I do? First thing I did was I asked every professor in my dental school to write me a glowing letter of recommendation, and they were good. And you know how I know? I wrote them all, Tommy. Yeah. When I'd ask an instructor to write me a letter, they'd look at me. I'd be like, oh no. And I'm like, wait. I'll write it. Just personalize it. They're like, okay, great. And I highly recommend taking that approach. So I had this letter writing campaign, and I realized rather quickly that was not moving the needle. So the next thing I did was I started calling the director of the clinic, right? Well, you're about my age. In 1983, it wasn't easy to call Switzerland, was it?
No.
I mean, you had to get the long distance operator. It was like a whole thing, right? And expensive. But I did it. And we didn't have cell phones. So here I am in dental school. And then I'm trying to figure out the timing, and I'm doing this at night and blah, blah, blah. And I realized that wasn't moving the needle. So then I had what I call a life-defining moment. And I tell students that come to my LEAP program, and we'll talk about LEAP in a little bit, that you will have life-defining moments in your life. Sometimes you plan them, sometimes you don't, sometimes they just happen. And this one I really didn't plan, but it just happened. And the life-defining moment was I was talking to the director, realizing he could really care less about me. And I said, can I take you to lunch? He said, lunch? I said, yeah, lunch. He goes, but you're in San Francisco and I'm in Switzerland. I'm like, that's fine. I'll fly out, which was even funnier because I was like broke as broke could be. But he said yes. And I figured out a way to borrow money. And I flew out there and he hired me. And I will tell you this, out of 400 applicants, guess how many flew out and had lunch with him?
One.
But you know what? It was a game changer. I mean, I spent 2 years in Switzerland. I met the most amazing people. I learned how to ski. In fact, I'm up at my ski house right now in Deer Valley, Utah.
Oh yeah.
Just a big passion of mine. And I learned how to speak French. I'm completely fluent in French. Quand je suis arrivé, je peux pas parler français, mais maintenant je peux parler très bien. And I'm completely fluent in French. And I think one of the things too that helped is as soon as I came back to the States, I started working ironically with a French-speaking dentist. So for the next 5 years, I got to practice. And then I married a French-speaking woman. So I continue to practice. So my French is pretty good.
That is outstanding. When you came back and started your own practice that you've had now since 1985, named Century City Aesthetic Dentistry, what were the early days of that practice like for you, getting it off the ground to growing to what it is today?
You know, the initial plan was that I was going to work with an older dentist. His name was Bud Hoffman, very sweet man. He went to school with my parents. And I was going to buy his practice and take it over. Well, as I started working in the office, he became reinvigorated and decided he didn't hate dentistry anymore and he was going to stay. And I actually had more patients than he had, and there just wasn't room for both of us. So serendipitously, the guy next door to us in the building moved out. He was a dentist. So I was able to move into a suite that was already all built out and everything for dentistry. And I started my practice there. Well, I started my practice and, you know, the most important thing when you start a practice is to get patients, right?
Yes.
I have a lot. And I also didn't have a lot of money. So I kind of sat down, and I encourage all business owners to do this, by the way. I kind of sat down and I thought, okay, what do I need to do to get people into my office? Right? Well, in Century City, there are 50,000 people who work in a 5-block radius of my office. We know, on average, 50% of the American population do not have a regular dentist. So that means there's 25,000 people in a 5-block radius of my office who need a dentist. They also work for big companies, which means they have dental insurance. I didn't have a lot of money, but what I did was I made up these flyers. It cost me like $300, basically saying, if you work in Century City and you have dental insurance and you come to my office, we'll accept insurance as full payment. You don't have to pay anything, and we'll be your new dentist. And then I hired a bunch of kids in Beverly Hills, because Beverly Hills High School is right next to my office. I paid them, I don't know, 50 cents an hour, something crazy. They went out and they basically placed one of these flyers in every single office in Century City. Well, the first month I was in practice, I got 75 new patients. The average dentist probably gets like 20 a month. The next month, we switched from external advertising to internal and external advertising, meaning instead of going out to unknown people, we then went to the people who had come in and said, hey, if you liked your experience in our office, please tell your coworkers and we'll give them an even better discount. And so the next month I got probably like 90 new patients.
Wow.
And since then, I probably have averaged about 70 new patients a month for all these years. And so I never had a day I wasn't busy as a dentist, like in my entire career. And I look at these young, dentists out there that are like playing video games during the day. I'm like, if I were in a medical building and I didn't have a patient for like 3 hours, you know what I would do, Tommy? I would go and knock on every office in that medical building, introduce myself to the people working in the front office and give them my cards and say, hey, I'm a dentist. I'm right downstairs. I'm right upstairs. But like, I don't know, like it's a whole crazy mentality out there.
I can't wrap my head around it either. Like this generation, the way they think doesn't compute to me.
It's not like, listen, I mean, I teach LEAP. LEAP is a motivational leadership program for high school and college kids. It's a nonprofit I do at UCLA every year where I bring in amazing speakers, Mark Wahlberg, Anthony Hopkins, Eva Longoria, Kathy Bates, Usher, Jason Alexander. I could go on and on and on and on and on. And we basically teach kids skills for success. And these kids come up to me, they're like, Dr. Bill, what's the secret of success? I'm like, it's not a secret. Work your buns off. That's the secret. Come on. This new mentality of like, oh, I'm going to be an influencer. And like, who are you influencing? You're like a 14-year-old. What? Like, when I first started doing social media stuff, I hired somebody to help me. They're like, oh, Dr. Bill, we need to get influencers in. I'm like, okay. So influencer comes in, we whiten their teeth for free, and, I look at my mouth, I'm like, you really need a cleaning. When's the last time you had a cleaning? Oh, it's been like 5 years. I'm like, ugh. I said, okay, well, why don't you like sign up and schedule a cleaning? They go, well, how much is that? I go, oh, it's like $170. They're like, I'm gonna have to wait a few months. And then I call my social media guy. I'm like, this guy can't even afford a cleaning. Like, who is he influencing? I don't want to work with these people. Like, that's not my audience.
They don't understand the term elbow grease.
Listen, when kids come to LEAP, we try to teach a lot of things, but if I can only get 2 things into their thick heads, it's this. 1, don't wait for opportunities, make them. If I meet another kid who tells me they're waiting for the universe to do something, I want to scream. Like, have you noticed that the universe is kind of busy right now? And number 2, Tommy, when you do get an opportunity, don't take it. Master it.
Love that line. Master it.
When ABC put me on Extreme Makeover, I'm not going to lie. I stunk. Dentistry. The dentistry was easy, but I was not an actor. Like the TV part, I stunk. I watched the first few episodes. I'm like, oh my God, if I don't do something, they're going to fire me. So what did I do? I took acting classes, hosting classes, teleprompting classes. I took cold reading classes. I trained for a skill that I was not familiar with. And little by little, it started to feel comfortable, and, I realized that if I couldn't portray myself in a way that the audience was going to relate to, they would fire me. And I didn't want that. I hired Raimi Warren Black. She's the woman who works with all the kids on American Idol and all these shows. And we did mock interviews over and over and over again. And she beat me up. She'd be like, sit up straight, look this way, stop doing this. Stop. I mean, and then the painful part was making me watch the videos. I'd be like, oh, cringing. Like, really? But you keep doing it over and over again because practice makes permanent.
Yes.
Not perfect. You can keep doing it the wrong way. Doesn't help. Hire a professional, go online, get a mentor, but learn how to do things the right way. And you'll be a lot more successful.
You've become known as the celebrity cosmetic dentist. Do you remember who your first celebrity was and how that has taken from that person to this massive list that you have these days?
I do. And I loved her all the way to the end. We lost her a few years ago. And your young listeners won't know who this is, but her name was Esther Williams. And she was MGM's biggest star. Esther Williams was the $1 Million Mermaid. She had an amazing career. And when she first came into my practice, I had no idea who she was. My office manager, who was older than me, was a big fan of hers and told me. And Esther and I became best friends. And she taught me a lot of amazing lessons too. Esther lived through an era of Hollywood we will never see again. I mean, those were the days when Hollywood would take a star and groom them and teach them to dance and sing. And Esther's the only star that MGM ever had who had 2 complete dressing rooms. Why? Wet days, dry days. Every single Esther Williams film had these lavish water scenes with water ballet and fire and all this stuff. And so on wet days, Esther was covered in Vaseline. She couldn't sit on a regular couch, so on wet days, she had the waterproof room, and on dry days, she had the other. But, I had such a great relationship with Esther, and I treated her all the way till the end. And she was an amazing lady.
I love that story. 2006, you did a New York Times bestseller, $1 Billion Smile, a complete guide to your extreme smile makeover. Was the reason for writing this book due to possibly the number of requests that you were getting of what is the $1 Billion Smile, or is this a concept that you had and just put on paper?
I'm going to be totally honest with you. The concept for the book evolved like this. My very dear friend, Paul Lombardi, was a writer and an on-air newscaster for New York One News. And he's like, Doc, you should do a book on smile makeovers. So he went out and pitched it to Jan Miller, who was my publisher. Well, she was my agent, my literary agent. And she does self-help celebrity stuff with like Dr. Phil and all these other guys. There had never been a book done on smiles or smile makeovers. So they wanted me to write a book. I said, no, I'm not going to write a book. I'm going to write a New York Times bestseller. They're like, what? I said, look, I don't need to write a book. But if I write a New York Times bestseller, then we can book me on all these big talk shows, right? So I went on the internet and I found a guy, his name is Michael Drew, who has a company called Promote a Book. And I met with Michael, and what they do is they help authors become New York Times bestsellers. And I said to Michael, what does it take to become a New York Times bestseller? He said, well, at the time, you needed to sell 20,000 books in the first 2 weeks. It was on the shelf, and you would hit the New York Times bestseller list. I said, okay. I thought about it for a second, and I said, okay, Michael, I own a company called Discus Dental. We make Zoom, Bright Smile, Night White, Day White. We ship product to 80,000 dentists every month. We rank them A, B, C, D, F. Ironically, our A and B doctors are about 20,000 doctors. So what if I bought the book for them as a gift of appreciation for supporting me and my company? And then to help fund that, we gave them an offer to buy more books for their waiting room at a reduced fee, and all the proceeds for that would go to LEAP Foundation. He said, oh my God, that'd be awesome. That's exactly what we did. So I bought 20,000 books. We sent it to 20,000 dentists, thanking them. They then bought books. We ended up raising something like $300,000 for LEAP. I became a New York Times bestseller overnight. And it wasn't a win-win. It was a win-win-win because the kids all got to go to LEAP too.
Dr. Bill, you have raised more than $40 million for children's charities and donated dental care to many charities, from Smiles for Life to Los Angeles Battered Women's Shelter. Where does your passion come from giving back and helping children and raise money for charities?
You know what, Tommy, my mantra for life is learn so you can earn and then return. I didn't grow up wealthy. We grew up really poor. Nobody gave me anything. I mean, thank goodness for, scholarships and all that, or I never would have been able to go to UCLA. I worked my butt off, and believe me, the scholarships that I've got, I've given back generously to UCLA, to my dental school. As soon as we started making money at Discus Dental, we gave back and gave back and gave back. And then about 22 years ago, we were approached by a group of dentists called the Crown Council. And they called our office and they said, can we buy your whitening products at cost and then give them to dental offices for a whitening campaign? It's called Smiles for Life, where basically a patient would come in, they would whiten their teeth at a discounted fee. And instead of writing a check to the dentist, they would write it to Smiles for Life, and we'll donate 100% of the money to charity. Well, my partner, Robert Heyman, and I called them back and we said, no, we're not going to sell it to you at a discounted fee. We're going to give it to you. And so we gave them millions and millions of dollars of whitening product. Then Garth Brooks and I did public service announcements all over the country, telling people, if you want to whiten your smile and help a child smile for life, call 1-877-4SMILES, and you'll be directly connected to a dental office in your area. And we've actually raised close to $50 million doing that. All the dentistry that I did on Extreme Makeover was donated. And that was close to $2 million in dentistry that I did for that show. And we've worked with battered women's shelters and a lot of other things. So, and I always tell dentists, I say, look, even if you can't afford to give thousands and thousands of dollars to charity, just do one smile makeover a year for somebody who really needs it. Contact the Battered Women's Shelter, the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. If you go to aacd.com, they have a site called the Give Back a Smile program, where they help people that, are not able to restore their teeth, get a free smile makeover. There's a lot of different ways to give back.
You mentioned your stint with Extreme Makeover. You also been a recurring guest on the CBS Emmy Award show, The Doctors. How much time do you actually spend with the patients on these makeover shows?
When we were filming Extreme Makeover, that was intense. I was working probably 50 hours a week as a dentist and then filming 14-hour days on the weekend. People don't know this, but for every 200 minutes that you film on these reality shows, 1 minute ends up on TV.
Wow.
So it's a lot of time. The Doctors, I used to be on all the time. I almost had like my own dressing room there. And then the pandemic hit. So that's really been scaled back. We don't even have our studio anymore. We used to be at Paramount Studios. We had a big studio there. Now it's all done virtually. So a lot of things have changed.
Dr. Bill, what's it like being a judge on the Miss USA beauty pageant? Is it stressful? Is it fun? What's that like?
It's funny you should ask that. So as a, I guess, celebrity dentist, I was asked by Paula Miles, who runs the 4 pageants. She does North Carolina, South Carolina, Louisiana, and Alabama. So she has those 4 states. And I would rotate through as a celebrity judge on these things. And I'll be honest with you, the first time I did it, I'm like, really, beauty pageants? But my daughter wanted to go. I'm like, okay, well, I'll bring my kid and I'll go to this. And I was not really, supportive of the whole idea. But once I got involved, I realized, you know what? This is really cool. Like, these young ladies are really smart. They're really motivated. For a lot of them, this is kind of like their first opportunity to really be on stage, to be in the public, to get confidence and really grow. And, I completely did a 180 on it. And it's funny because I've remained very good friends with many, many, many of the young women I've met in there and helped them with jobs and careers. And one of my favorite people in the world is a young woman named Lindsay Sporer, who was my very first pageant. And she just got engaged. She's getting married. She's graduating law school. I mean, it's amazing to see the growth. And so I'm a big supporter now.
You've talked a few times about Discus Dental and you inventing Zoom, Bright Smile, Night White, Day White, also Breath RX, which is the #1 dentist dispersed line of freshening products. And you have this, I'm going to call it a thirst for invention. Do you have something else on the horizon that you're inventing for dentistry?
Yeah, actually, we sold Discus Dental in 2010 to Philips, makers of Sonicare. And I had to sign a non-compete, so I wasn't allowed to do any new whitening products for a while. But this year, we're launching 2 really cool products. The first product that you should see everywhere is called Poof Whitening Strips. So I don't know if you've ever used Crest White Strips, but basically it's the same concept, only the strip sticks to your teeth and it disappears. It melts in 15 minutes. It's impregnated with carbamide peroxide, which is the active ingredient in tooth whitening. And by making it a lot more hydrophobic than, say, those Listerine breast strips, it takes about 15 minutes to dissolve on your teeth. And while it's doing that, the carbamide peroxide is whitening your teeth. So you do it for 2 treatments a day for about 10 days, and your teeth will become significantly whiter. So basically, the strip disappears, stains disappear, and poof, your teeth are white.
Love that idea. Folks, keep your eyes out for that. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes to Dr. Bill's New York Times bestseller and $1 Billion Smile book. What is the future of cosmetic dentistry then, in your opinion?
I mean, I think as materials keep getting better and better and better, the goal is to keep making stronger and stronger restorations that look more and more lifelike. The best cosmetic dentistry is when you can't tell somebody had cosmetic dentistry. When you see people whose teeth are like so incredibly white that you need sunglasses, that's not the goal. The goal is to make it as natural as possible and as durable as possible. And we're getting there. It's crazy because 99% of what I do on a daily basis in cosmetic dentistry, Tommy, wasn't even invented when I was in dental school. This is all like new stuff that I had to learn.
How do you juggle the demands of your practice, TV appearances, and being a humanitarian, your private life, and philanthropy?
You need to create a great team. I mean, I can't tell you how many busy executives and professionals I've talked to about this. I have a team of people around me that make this all possible. I have a personal assistant, Nicole, who knows everything about my life and, is involved in all of my extracurricular things, my family, everything. I have an amazing office manager, Sinette. She runs my practice, it's like a fort there. Every single thing is buttoned down and she has a handle on that. And then, I'm very fortunate. I have a very close relationship with my ex-wife who kind of helps keep everything in the family together. And between these three women, I'm in check. I just say, point me in the right direction and tell me where to go. As far as the philanthropy stuff, most of that is all through my LEAP Foundation. And I have two amazing young men, Charlie and James, that have been working with me since the inception of LEAP. And for those of you who have kids, 15 to 25, I encourage you to check out LEAP, Motivational Leadership Program. Its website is www.leapfoundation.com. And every summer, we do two programs concurrently. We do an in-person live program at the UCLA campus, and we have a virtual program. So we'll have several thousand kids on the virtual program. The UCLA program will have about 400 to 500 students. And this isn't about dentistry. This is learning skills to be successful in life. These are skills that aren't typically taught. Time management, money management, speaking skills, how to write a resume, how to apply for a job. Our goal is that when these kids graduate college, they don't move back home.
I like that.
They go get real jobs.
I'll put a link in the show notes to leapfoundation.com as well. Dr. Bill, when it's all said and done for you and you decide that you're not going to be part of the practice anymore and you're going to be away from the limelight, what do you want your legacy to be remembered as?
Well, first of all, that's not going to happen until I can't see or I can't hold my hands straight. So, I just hope that I'm able to help encourage people to live the best lives that they can live, and that's the whole goal of LEAP, is really to help give these young students the skills that they need to be successful in life.
Dr. Bill, one of the things that I value a lot of is time, because time is precious in everybody's life. So I want to thank you for taking time out of your day and your life to be on my show and talking a little bit about your journey. I greatly appreciate you being on Before the Lights.
Well, I thank you for having me, Tommy. And also for your listeners, I have a podcast. It's ranked in the top 2.5 percentile of all podcasts worldwide, called Meet the Mentor. And I basically have interviewed all these people have spoken at LEAP and many more. Mark Wahlberg, Anthony Hopkins, Kathy Bates, Eva Longoria, Paula Abdul, Jonathan Bennett, Jason Alexander, Richard Branson. And it not only talks about their career, but the real, I think, secret sauce of my podcast is I ask these people to kind of give a roadmap of what a young student would need to do to emulate their career. If I want to be the next Apollo Ono, what do I need to do, to kind of follow in these guys' footsteps? And it's become incredibly popular. We're number 1 in Yemen, number 2 in Iceland, number 3 in Finland, and we're in the top 100 podcasts in over 120 countries.
Absolutely love that. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to that.
And the other thing is too, Tommy, I probably have more Instagram followers than any other dentist in the world. And I actually answer all my DMs on my Instagram. So if any of your, listeners want to get a hold of me directly, please just, go on my Instagram. It's Dr. Dr. Bill Dorfman. And it's really me. And if you ask me, I promise I'll respond.
Make sure you do that, listeners. If you have more questions for Dr. Bill, I'll put all those links in the show notes. Follow me on Instagram at Before the Lights Podcast. There's also 5 extra minutes of this interview coming up. To hear that, join the members area. Go to beforethelightspod.com/support. That's beforethelightspod.com/support. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. And until next time, everyone, a salute, a chin chin.